For a while, every single interview and final interview was done remote. The world was remote, but we are back to in-person, and most companies are having on-site, in-person interviews. In today's video, I want to give you a guide on exactly what you need to do to win your in-person interview. Because I've been in recruitment for 15 years, and the reality is interviewing online and interviewing in person, well, they're two different things. Let's go. And the first thing you need to do is you need to dress the part. It is important that when you go on site and you're meeting with people that you are dressed in a similar way, right? You want to match their energy when it comes to how professionally they are dressed, right? If you go into a place and they are all in flip-flops and shorts and tank tops and you are in a tuxedo, you are going to feel incredibly awkward. On the flip side, if you come in and you're incredibly casual, but they are all dressed up, and you look around and you are the least professional looking person in that room, in that office, in that space, you are going to feel terrible. And either one of these things are probably going to be bad for your chances of actually landing a job. So my advice whenever I tell people to do this is talk to the recruiter. The recruiter is going to be honest with you. Say, hey, can you give me some advice? What is typical for a person to wear when they're coming to interview with your organization? And they will give you an answer. They will tell you straight, oh, okay, what is customary is people wear blank. And that pretty much sorts it out. But you want to make sure that you understand that. It's as easy as asking the recruiter, what do people wear? What is typical? How will people be dressed for my interview? And making sure that you match that. It's a small thing, but it's very important. The next thing you need to do is you need to make sure that you arrive during the most appropriate window to arrive. What does that mean? It means you absolutely, unequivocally cannot be late. If you are a minute late, you might as well not show up to the interview because you're probably not going to get the job. It is a really competitive market out here, and everyone who goes to a final interview is going to be qualified. And if you have 4 candidates who are equally qualified and they all showed up for the final interview, but one of them was late, guess who is not getting the job? The late one. It's also important not to show up too early. If you show up 35 minutes prior to your interview, that actually will not be seen as a good thing. That will be seen as a negative thing. I talked to a CEO one time who told me he was always incredibly frustrated when people showed up any earlier than 15 minutes because what it shows is not taking into account and in consideration that the person who is interviewing them is going to be busy. Because when you show up to the office, what do we have to do? Well, we have to entertain you. We have to tell you where to go. We have to ask you, do you want anything to drink? And if you show up really, really early, it's a lack of awareness. So the perfect time to walk into the building in which you are going to be interviewing is anywhere between like 7 to 12 minutes before the interview. I always say 10 minutes is perfect. Now you can arrive in the parking lot 30 minutes before your interview starts, and you want to make sure you're on time because even being a minute late can be terrible for your chances of landing the job. But if you arrive 30 minutes early, what you want to do is spend that last 20 minutes in your car listening to hype music, watching Ben Talks Talent YouTube videos, preparing for your interview, whatever it is. Do not walk in any earlier than 10 minutes before your interview. The next thing you need to do is you need to be truly prepared. If you go to an interview in person and it does not go well, you cannot close your laptop and move on with your life and say, well, I'll win another one, right? Like, you can't win them all. Better luck next time. No, if you are in person in an interview and you are bombing it, guess what? You just got to sit there and continue going through that interview. So you want to make sure you are prepared. You want to make sure you set yourself up for success to actually succeed in the interview, nail it, and increase the likelihood of you getting a job offer. Now, if you want to do this and you are serious about being the best candidate possible, I want you to go down into the description box. In there, I have linked my full interview prep guide. And it has full tutorials with me teaching you about all the facets of interviewing and some secrets from recruiters on exactly what you need to do to be the best prepared candidate possible. There's videos I made specifically prepping you, and there are actually even templates for interacting with hiring managers and recruiting in the template. And if you put in the code Starbucks, you'll actually get it for 50% off. So it'll cost you less than 2 days going to Starbucks to be the most prepared candidate possible. So right below in the description box, it is the top link with the fire emojis next to it. That's right. And the next thing you need to do is you need to have the right energy. So when you are online and you're doing a virtual interview, your energy is less important. But when you are in person and you're interacting with people and you're walking in, you're saying hi to the receptionist, you are being led to the office, you are engaging with people, maybe people who work in the office, your energy needs to be on point. What does that mean? It means you need to be friendly, attentive, smiling, and you just need to be giving off the right vibes. That's not quantifiable. I get that. But you need to be friendly and positive, right? These are the things that are important. Because when you're hiring for your team, I'll tell you what you don't want. You don't want the person who comes in and immediately brings the energy down and makes it seem like, I don't know if I want to work with this person. But the person who is friendly, the person who is positive, the person who has good energy, that's a person you want to work for. And believe it or not, these things are absolutely taken into consideration when it comes to hiring decisions. Now, it's really important to engage everyone. When you're in an interview, you want to be engaging with every single person you meet. Your interview does not start when they go, okay, tell me about yourself. It starts when you walk in the door. Are you engaging with the receptionist, right? I've talked to hiring managers who will actually go after an interview and they'll talk to the receptionist and go, hey, what did you think of that candidate? And I've actually heard stories, like no joke, I've heard this, where the receptionist said, well, they weren't really nice or really friendly to me, and that candidate actually got passed up because of that. Now, I think the candidate might have been nervous, and maybe that's an unfair reason to pass on a person because of one data point like that. But the reality is unfair things happen all the time in interviews, and you want to make sure you insulate yourself from that risk. So you want to be nice, and you want to be friendly, and you want to pay attention to every single person that you engage with in the entirety of the interview process. Now, this is specifically true if you're in group interviews. If you're talking to multiple people, like a panel interview, what you don't want to do is look just at the hiring manager and ignore all the other people, or talk just to the men and ignore the women, right? You want to make sure, or vice versa, right? You need to engage every single person, look everyone in the eye, ask everyone questions, and treat every person on a panel interview like they're an equal member who is of equal importance. The next thing you need to do is you need to have questions prepared. It is really important to have questions ready to give to the people, because when you're in an interview, right, and you're in person, and they go, okay, do you have any questions for us? And there's like 20 minutes left in the interview time. If you do not have questions, it is actually more awkward in person, because you're like, no, I don't. And they're like, oh, well, okay, I guess we'll just all get up and leave. It's really awkward. So even beyond that, if you didn't care about that, right? Let's take that off the table. It's really important to have great questions. It shows you prepared, and it shows a level of interest in the role. Now, if you want really good questions, in that guide I mentioned, I have a whole bunch of great questions. You could also look at other videos I have that teach you great questions to ask that'll differentiate you as a candidate in the interview process. This is a note that I always tell people. When you go in person, look around and take inventory of how people seem. Do they seem happy? Do they seem miserable? Do they seem like they get along and they're talking to each other? Or do they seem like they're looking for a bus to throw themselves in front of? This matters. Like when I go to an office, I want to see how people feel. Do they look like they're happy being here, or they're miserable being here? That's just for you. Because if they look like they're miserable being here, do you really want to work there? I don't. Now, the last thing that I think is really important when it comes to in-person interviews is you need to win the first 3 minutes and the last 3 minutes of the interview. It has been shown that these 6 minutes, this period of time, the 2 periods of time here, they disproportionately impact the outcome. So I made a whole video here on how to get a job in 6 minutes, and it teaches you how to nail the first 3 minutes and the last 3 minutes. It's the most important 6 minutes of the interview. You've got to crush it. So I'm done here, but I'll see you over there.